Guys, Genshin Impact has a whaling problem. With this I mean that the benefit signature weapons and constellations give in this game has become so high lately that I'm starting to see it as a huge problem, and I want to talk about it with you. First of all, I will say that this is not something that just started recently. For example, constellations have been very impactful for years now. Initially by giving huge benefits if you unlocked all of them, and later on even just a constellation 1 or 2. Looking at things like Hutao's Constellation 1, Kaota's Constellation 2, Raiden's Constellation 2, it's very noticeable how investment of that kind has been very relevant in Genshin for a while now. So, why am I saying it's a problem 4 years into the game? Simply put, constellations and signature weapons are stronger than ever before, and they also have a statistical design I don't really like. This last point is actually the first one I'd like to elaborate on, with a very clear comparison about weapons in particular. When Hutao came out around 3 years ago, she had a signature weapon, Staff of Homa, that was by far the best option on her. This meant people have what is typically called fear of missing out, in that they didn't want to miss out on maximizing the output of their Hutao. While this is on its own a problem, it was sort of acceptable to Mistio because of how strong Homa was on every polyarm character. It has a pretty versatile crit damage secondary stat, and it's passive, while clearly favoring Hutao by providing HP bonuses and an HP to attack conversion that becomes bigger when the character's HP are below 50%, still worked for all attack and HP scaling characters. For example, it was really good on Xiao, Raiden, Xiangling, and so on. Flash forward to 3 years later, let's take a look at Arlecchino's signature now. In terms of main and secondary stat, not much difference, high base attack and crit rate bonuses. The passive is, however, the problem. The weapon gives 25% worth of bond of life to the holder when they use a charge attack, and also 12% damage bonus tied to it. Additionally, if the character has 30% bond of life or more, so more than the amount the weapon itself gives, the total damage bonus will be increased to 36%. This is meant to favor Arlecchino, because she can generate bond of life for herself, and is something other characters can't typically obtain excluding very specific situations. Not only that, but the bond of life can be cleared if your character receives healing of its amount. So that means that if you run a healer on the team, you won't even get the first 12% damage bonus through this weapon. As a result, this makes this very recent and supposedly super strong signature weapon a worse general option than Homa, the almost 4 years old weapon. To counterbalance this, it's very strong on Arlecchino, towering over 4-star and 5-star options alike by a gap wide enough that you will just feel bad by not getting it. I think I made part of the problem clear here. While in the past, by getting Homa, you were getting a 5-star weapon that will be good on most polyarm characters, whether past or future, by getting Crimson Moon, you're getting a weapon that is only exceptional on Arlecchino, and as a result, I think it has less relative value. This is a really widespread problem now, with signature weapons all being much better than 4-star options for the character they're meant for, but at the same time, having effects specific enough that they won't ever be anything more than decent for the other characters. There are a few exceptions here, for example Nuvolette and Brizzly's signature, that have passives whose effect activate when the holder's HP increases or decreases. This not only can naturally happen in battle when facing opponents, but it's fully obtainable by just having Firina on the team, since her elemental skill will continuously drain HP from your team. In general, however, 5-star weapons are very specific now, and combined with the fact that every new signature weapon is so good for their respective character, this also creates a second issue, namely the fact that you might feel bad not pulling for a new character signature weapon if you compare him to a previous character you pulled the signature for. For example, let's say you have Arlecchino with her signature, and you just pulled for Kinage, but you don't plan to pull for his signature as well. By doing that, not only you're missing out on a potential 30% damage increase on him, but also you might be putting yourself in a situation where you feel like his performance isn't really impressive compared to your higher investment Arlecchino. This was less of a problem in the past, because those signature weapons were just weaker, but also, once again, they just had more versatile passives all around, which made it so that you could use those same 5-star weapons on your new characters for very respectable results. If you're a person that is bothered by this kind of thing, so your new characters not holding a candle compared to your older characters that have their signature weapons, this might put you in this never-ending cycle where you keep pulling for signature weapons for your new characters to shine with. I think this is a very bad development for Genshin, and it's getting worse as time goes on, since Nathan signatures, for example, are stronger than Fontaine signatures so far. This is, of course, even more of a thing with Constellations. Constellations are dupes you get for a specific character, so unlike weapons, they're investment layers that are strictly tied to the character you get them for. Since they're more personal buffs, they impact characters' kit in more diverse ways than weapons do. We've seen all kinds of Constellations in the past. Constellations that fix energy issues, Constellations that make it easier to satisfy some characters' kit conditions, Constellations that give character interruption resistance, and most commonly damage increase Constellations. Back in the day, I would say that excluding the Constellation 6, Constellations were only situationally good. This was true even for top tier carries such as Xiao, Ganyu, Ayaka, and we even had cases like Child that didn't get particularly significant meta benefits even at Constellation 6. Nowadays the situation is much different, because ever since Inazuma came out, Hoyoverse started making more attempts at making early Constellations much more impactful. From a mental manipulation perspective, I assume this decision was made to put these very impactful investment layers closer to the player's monetary reach, and as a result make them seem more appealing to go for. But even then, however, it was a situational thing still. Characters like Raiden, Yae and Nahida had early Constellations that definitely made them much more impactful, but we simultaneously also had releases like Itto, Alhaitham and Baiju that didn't benefit much from their early Constellations. It wasn't until Fontaine that Hoyoverse seriously accelerated in this direction and made Constellations feel like something you have to go for on a consistent basis. Nuvolette, Priestley, Furina, Jianyun, Arlecchino, Corand, Shiori, and Sigewinne are all 5 stars released in the Fontaine cycle that benefit massively from their first 1 or 2 Constellations. Of course, many of these characters are very good at Constellation 0 as well, but that doesn't really make this thing much better in my eyes, especially when said Constellations also bring very noticeable gameplay improvements, like Nuvolette, Arlecchino and Clorant's Constellations granting interruption resistance, and Furina's Constellation 2 basically removing a reliance on having a team-wide healer on team. Furthermore, the problem is becoming even worse now in Atlan, with Kinich and Molani having damage increase benefits from their Constellation and signature weapon higher than ever before. This is just an insane upgrade, and much bigger than almost anything we've seen in the past. As I mentioned earlier, this also exacerbates the issue of new characters feeling much worse than your old characters if they don't have the same level of investment. A Constellation 0 free-to-play Molani is much worse than a Constellation 2 Arlecchino, so if you pulled for the latter, you'll be much more likely to also go for Molani's Constellations to match that level of performance. That's just how it goes. I say this because it's a problem that also applies to myself. I have Constellation 1 and signature on Nuvolette, Constellation 3 and signature on Arlecchino. If I pull for new carries, in order for them to compete with these two, even remotely compete, they will need to have a similar level of investment. For supports though, it's a bit different, because for example, let's say you're getting a Constellation 2 Furina, you're getting a performance increase that will affect a lot of characters in your box, because Furina is a character that can fit on a lot of teams, so from that point of view, the investment makes more sense. Anyway, these were just my thoughts, I guess. I don't like how predatory the monetary aspects of Genshin are becoming. Of course, they've always been predatory, it's a gacha game after all, but I think it's worse than ever now, and there is no sign of stopping, unfortunately. And with this, I'm done for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and also go check my account review video. Bye bye.